A trace of fish belly appeared on the sky. In the small broken yard on the back mountain of Qingyun sect, Lin Jing was sitting on a shiny stone with his legs closed, and he was muttering in his mouth, as if he was muttering something to whom. There was a faint smell of grass in the air, and occasionally a few sounds of birds came from far away, making the place even more deserted. He was covered in gray and clumsy clothes, and his cuffs were grinding. At first glance, he looked like a boy from a countryside, but his eyes suddenly opened, and there was a breath that was incompatible with this broken place. It's another vain energy. Lin Jing sighed, her eyes slightly opened, and her eyebrows were so hard that she could suck her hair. He lowered his head and looked at the piece of ancient jade the size of a palm held in his palm. The thing looked ordinary and gray, and there was still a piece missing on the corner, as if it was brought from a broken blade. But this thing was the only thing his father left to him. He said that there was a big secret hidden inside that could make him turn over. Unfortunately, he studied it for 3 years but couldn't see any of it. Brother Jing. What are you fucking? Are you staring at it again? A crisp sound came from the outside of the yard. Then a figure trickled over the low wall and jumped in. It was a girl wearing a blue dress with a horse's tail on her head, her eyes wide and bright, as if she could see through people's hearts. Her name is Yun Yao. She is the childhood sweetheart who grew up with Lin Jing. She is also a few people in this Qingyun sect who do not mind abandoning him. I'm not fucking anything, just think about this broken jade. Lin Jing curled his lips, stuffed the ancient jade into it, stood up and patted the soil on his butt. Why are you here again? Are you afraid that your master will be caught back and punish the sect? Yun smiled and came over and said in a low voice, I sneaked out. Master is going to the front mountain to discuss the matter today, no one cares about me. But you, Brother Qing, I heard that today is the day to be selected in the inner door. Don't you try it? Once you are attracted by the elders, you will reach the top in one step. Lin Jing heard it, his face froze, and immediately smiled bitterly and slammed his head. Come on, I have a little bit of cultivation, and I will be able to see you when I go there. Which of the guys in the inner door is not the root of the heavenly spirit? My root of the soul is not enough to be accompanied by others. Yun curled his lips, obviously not satisfied with his answer, and said with his waist, why are you so unafraid of ambition? The path to cultivating immortals is originally a journey against the will of heaven. Who said that the soul cannot come out? Besides, your brain is very useful, and you can always think of ways that others cannot imagine, and you will not be able to make a world of heaven without any intention of making a living. Lin Jing was a little helpless when she said it. She wanted to turn it back, and a low sound suddenly came from afar, long and heavy, as if it was hitting someone's chest, making people feel tight. Yun's face changed and turned toward the direction of the sound. This is the sect convening order? What's going on? Is there anything big? Lin Jing also raised his eyebrows, and the clock sounded 3 times. This was not a common thing. Although Qingyun sect is just an inconspicuous small sect in the lower realm, it is very strict. This convening order will usually only arise when encountering a large enemy or the sect has major decisions. He patted Yun's shoulder and said in a low voice, let's go and see, don't you have something wrong? The two trotted along the way, crossed the Yanli Trail in the back mountain, and arrived at the front mountain building of Qingyun sect. At this time, the public was already gathered on the public hall, and the elites from the outside, and even several elders who did not show up usually stood on the platform with a serious expression. Lin Jing and Yun rushed into the crowd and stood firmly. They heard an old man with white beard clearing his throat on the stage and open his mouth with a low voice. I have summoned you today because of the urgent news from the upper realm. There are strange phenomena in the fairy world. The spirits around the heavenly palace are turbulent, and it is suspected that a great disaster will come. As soon as this happened, the crowd below exploded. Fairyland? The temple of the heavenly palace? These words are simply unattainable to the cultivators in the lower realm. They usually can't hear them for a few times. Now I suddenly say, what great disaster is there? Who can't panic? Lin Jing stood in the crowd with his eyebrows tightly locked. Although he knew nothing about the fairy world, he always had a bad feeling in his heart, as if he was being targeted by something. Yun Yao buried his ears and muttered in a low voice, "Brother Jing, what do you think this has to do with us? The fairy world is so far away, so we can't worry about these little people, right?" Lin Jing shook his head, without saying a word, staring at the elder on the stage. The other party continued, "The Immortal Realm has ordered that the lower realm sects need to send disciples to the Middle Realm to help explore the root of the strange phenomena. Although my Qingyun sect is young, I cannot stay out of the matter. During the negotiations between the elders and old people, I decided to select 10 disciples from the inner door and set out in 3 days." The voice fell, and there was another controversy below. Some people are excited and some are afraid that they can go to the Middle Realm. It is a huge opportunity for disciples from the lower realm, but this mission is also extremely dangerous. Who knows if there will be no return? Lin Jing heard that there was no turmoil in his heart. He knew that such a good thing would not be able to move him, and the inner door had already had her red eyes, so he could not have the share of his disciple as an outer door. As expected, the elder quickly announced the list, and 10 names were reported by each one. All of them were top disciples in the inner door, and there was nothing Lin Jing had to do. He was shoulder-to-face and was about to pull Yun Yao away when he suddenly heard the elders say, "In addition, among the disciples in the outside world, if there are those who want to register themselves, they can participate in the assessment. If they can pass, they can also go there." As soon as this happened, Lin Jing stepped forward, turned to Yun, and found that she was looking at herself excitedly. "Brother Jing, isn't this the opportunity? Go and try it, it's 10% or so. I might be able to get to know the secrets of the fairy world." Lin Qing was moved in his heart and said that it was fake not to be tempted. Although he always said that he was not successful, who didn't want to climb up? The path of cultivating immortality was originally made by step. If you miss this opportunity, you might have to spend your time in this small sect. But he also knew that 99% of this task was to go without going back. After the affairs of the fairy world, how could they get these little girls involved? "Let me say it again, I think about it," Lin Jing said perfunctorily and did not give a clear answer. Yun still wanted to do it, but he pulled him away from the venue. Back in the small yard in the back mountain, Lin Jing sat alone on the stone, took out the piece of ancient jade, and stared at it in a daze. The temple of the sky and the violent spirit that the old man said just now always made him feel that he had something to do with this jade. Although there was no basis, he just had a straightforward feeling, as if this jade was urging him to do something. As night falls, the moonlight is in the yard, which looks particularly deserted. Lin Jing was holding the ancient jade, and the brain was full of the words he heard during the day. He was thinking about it when he suddenly felt a warm palm, and the ancient jade actually started to move slightly, as if he had lived. He was startled and looked down. He saw a faint light appearing on his jade face. Then a blurry sound echoed in his brain, "The way of heaven, collapsed, the chess game, has opened." The sound of the sound continued, as if it was coming from a very far place. Lin Qing was shocked when she heard it and almost threw the jade out. He calmed down and tried to ask, "Who is saying? What does that mean?" But the sound did not rise again, and the light of the ancient jade dissipated, returning to the original gray-slicing model. Lin Jing sat there, sweating all over her head, her heart beating like a drum. Although he didn't understand what this sound meant, the words "the way of heaven collapsed" were engraved into his brain like a knife. When he thought of the strange phenomena in the fairy world mentioned by the old man in the day, he suddenly felt that he might have fallen into something amazing. "Brother Jing! Are you here?" Yun Wang's voice came from outside the hospital again, interrupting his thoughts. She pushed open the wood door and ran in panting, holding a paper in her hand. "I just heard that the registration assessment will begin tomorrow, and the number of names is limited. Why don't you try it? I'll write your name." Lin Jing was stunned. When he took the paper, he saw that his name was indeed written on it, and the seal of the outer manager was placed next to it. He looked at Yun, laughed and cried and said, "What are you doing? If you don't ask, I'll make the decision." Yun stuck out his tongue and said with a smile, "Aren't I afraid of you to show off? Don't worry, I'll go with you." Once you've really passed, let's go to the central realm together, and I might be able to make a name for myself. Lin Jing looked at her face full of expectations, and her heart felt warm, but she was worried that she couldn't say anything. He looked down at the ancient jade in his hand, and the saying "the way of heaven collapsed" appeared in his brain. He always thought that this assessment might be a turnaround point. It would take a flying sweep into the sky and a disaster would be endless. The next morning, the Qingyun sect's trial field was already crowded. There are many people who have registered their names among the disciples of the outside world, but most of them have the intention of trying to see. After all, they can pass the assessment, and even 1 out of 10 cannot choose one. Lin Jing stood in the crowd, looking a little inconspicuous. Yun Jing next to him was full of energy and kept swearing him, "Brother Jing, come on, the assessment is just about comparing the spirit and mind, it's no big deal." The assessment is divided into 2 aspects. The first aspect is to test the strength of spiritual power, and the second aspect is to test the mind and nature, which sounds simple, but to external disciples, it is difficult to ascend to heaven. Although Lin Jing is a spiritual root, he has developed a good spirit by exploring himself over the years, and he is able to compete with the middle-class disciples in the inner door. The first priority was quite smooth. He was sturdy and forced himself to enter the top 20, which made many people look at him with admiration. But when we get to the second level of attention to the test, things are not that simple. There is a huge black stone in the center of the test hall. It is said that it is a treasure brought back from the central world by the ancestors of the sect. It can evoke the deepest fear and thoughts in people's hearts. Many people collapse as soon as they get close, and some even faint directly. Lin Jing stood in front of the black stone, took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and suddenly the sound of the ancient jade suddenly appeared in her brain. "The chess game has been opened." His heart was shocked, and when he opened his eyes, he realized that he was no longer on the trial site, but was standing in an endless darkness. There was nothing around, only a huge chessboard was hidden away, and the black and white chess pieces on the chessboard were interspersed, as if they were alive, moving constantly. Every time he moved, a thunderous sound came up, which made his eardrums hurt. "Where is this?" Lin Jing tied his teeth and tried to walk forward, but every time he took a step, he felt like he was pressing down 1,000 pounds, and he almost had to kneel down. He knew there was a voice in his ears, "Under the sky, all things are chess. If he doesn't enter the game, he will always be a chess piece." This hit his heart like a replay. Lin Jing suddenly realized that this was not an ordinary illusion, but something related to the ancient jade. He stood up straight and gritted his teeth and said, "I don't care what you are. Don't want to control me. Want to let me be a chess piece? Make a dream." As the sound fell, the chessboard suddenly shattered and turned into countless light spots and dissipated. Lin Jing's eyes blurred, and when he was slimming his eyes, he had already returned to the trial site. He gasped, his body soaked in sweat. Yun Yao next to him was looking at him tightly. "Brother Jing, you are fine, are you? You just stood there and stopped moving, and I was scared to death." Lin Jing shook his head and smiled reluctantly. "It's okay, is it going to be over?" Yun was staring, his eyes were as bright as stars. "I've passed it. You are the only one who has tried his best through the heart and nature in the outside disciple." The elders were stunned and said, "You are a genius." Lin Jing heard this and felt no joy in her heart, but it became even heavier. He knew that what he saw in this trial was definitely not a simple illusion. The chess and sounds seemed to be warning him that what he had to face next was far more terrifying than he thought. The assessment results were announced soon, and Lin Jing's name was listed, becoming the only disciple who had been dismantled from the outside. 3 days later, he will go to the middle realm to explore the roots of the strange phenomena in the fairy world. He stood on the test site, looked down at the ancient jade in the morning, and murmured, "No matter what you are, one day, I will figure out your secret, and the chess game under the sky." "Who is playing this chess game?" Yun Yao next to him smiled and patted his shoulder. "Brother Jing, don't be stunned. Go back and pack up. The middle world is not something we can compare with in this small place. Maybe there is something waiting for us." Lin Jing pointed at her and followed her back, but her heart seemed to have a big stone. He knew that this trip to the Middle Realm would never be as simple as it seemed on the surface, and the ancient jade in his hand might be the key to open up all the gangs. 3 days passed. Early in the morning of the Qingyun sect's departure, the sky was not yet bright, and there were already people gathering on the mountain square in front of the sect. Lin Qing was carrying a broken cloth bag, with a few pieces of washing clothes and some dry food stuffed in her head. She stood at the end of the team, looking a little out of place. Yun Yao next to him was full of energy. Although she was not selected to go to the Central Realm, she still forced Lin Jing to send him away. Brother Jing, when you arrive in the middle, you can watch the cultivation of your body. Remember to bring me some strange things and come back. Yuning smiled and poked his arm, his eyes full of expectation. Lin Jing curled his lips and said helplessly, "Come on, I'm going to do the job, not going to the market, so how can I find any rare things for you? Besides, in the Middle World, I heard that the spirit is as strong as water. Even a grass can become a spirit, and it would be great if I could save my life." Yun heard it, his face darkened, and he hummed with a look of vigor, "Why do you always say this kind of simple eloquence? Isn't it just to check out any strange phenomena? The elders said that it is very safe to have the immortal envoys in the Middle World. Don't make any trouble for me, just come back safely." Lin Jing smiled and said, but she didn't answer again, but her heart was heavy. He lowered his head and touched the ancient jade inside, and the illusion of the chessboard he saw on the test site that day appeared in his brain. Although he didn't say it, he always felt that this trip to the Middle World would probably not be able to get along with the jade, and might even have any connection with the strange phenomena in the fairy world mentioned by the old man. At this time, the leader of the team cleared his throat and shouted in a low voice, "Trial disciples, the time has arrived, let me go. When you go to the Middle World, you must listen to the arrangements of the immortal envoy and do not act without authorization. Those who are invincible will punish them according to the rules of the sect." After speaking, he swung his hand and the team started the journey. More than 10 disciples of the Qingyun sect followed the elders to the sending room outside the sect. Lin Jing turned around and looked at Yun, seeing her standing there and snatching her hands, shouting all the way in her mouth. Her heart warmed up, she pointed at her, and then turned around and followed the team. The sending yard is located in the forbidden area of the back mountain of Qingyun sect. It is an ancient marquee carved with bluestone. In the middle of the yard is a scattered spirit stone floating, and the air is filled with heavy spiritual waves. Lin Jing still saw this thing first and couldn't help but take a few more glances, thinking that if he could sneak a little bit of the spirit stone back, he might be able to change several high-level exercises. "Everyone is standing, don't look west." The leader of the team glared at Lin Jing, then he sealed his hands and recited a few spells in his mouth. When the sending camp was about to illuminate a dazzling white light, covering everyone, Lin Jing felt a flash in front of him, as if he was being pulled hard by something. Then he felt like weightlessness, and his ears were filled with shouts. When he opened his eyes again, he was already standing on a completely unfamiliar land. Around them are undulating mountains, with clouds lying on the top of the mountain. You can see about a few palaces floating in the air, so you can almost squeeze out water. There was still a faint fragrance of flowers in the air, and I felt comfortable all over my body after taking a breath. Lin Qing was shocked. Is this the Middle World? Sure enough, it is more than a little stronger than the broken place in the lower realm. The people from Qingyun sect are here? A cold voice came from a distance. Lin Jing looked at him and saw a young man in a white robe walking over, looking out of his temper, like a person walking out of the painting. He hung a jade pendant on his waist, with complicated runes engraved on it, and it seemed that it was nothing. The man glanced at the Qingyun sect's people and bowed slightly, as if he was a little dissatisfied. "Why did you come to such a person? The other sects have arrived long ago." The leader hurriedly bowed and said with a smile, "Sir Huixian envoy, my Qingyun sect is remote, and my disciples have limited cultivation. All those who can come are here. I also hope that the immortal envoy will understand." The man hummed and said without saying anything. He turned around and walked towards a mountain far away. He walked along the way, saying, "Come here, don't waste time, the strange phenomenon is exploring it in no time. Lin Jing followed the team forward, looking at the immortal envoy in his heart. The other party's cultivation was unpredictable, and the pressure he was free from breathing, and he probably could not breathe like this group of people with just one finger. However, although this immortal envoy looked cold, there was a hint of anxiety in his eyes, as if he had any concerns about this mission. Lin Jing was moved in his heart. I wonder if there's really any big problem with this strange phenomenon. Even the people in the middle world can't sit still? After about half a minute of leaving, everyone came to a huge valley. Hundreds of people gathered at the entrance of the valley, and there were disciples from all sects from the lower realms. They were dressed in different clothes, but most of them were tight and curious on their faces. The spirit inside the valley was more intense, and it was possible to hear the thunderous sound of the thunderous birds, as if something was exploding. Lin Jing narrowed his eyes and looked into the valley, only to see the sky far away appearing a strange purple-red color. At any time, lightning strikes down, as if the sky is about to collapse. Is this a strange place? Lin Jing murmured in a low voice. A disciple from the inner door heard it. He replied in a small voice, I heard that this valley is called Soul Valley, which is a forbidden area in the middle world. No one dares to enter. In the past few months, there has been a sudden spiritual storm here, and space cracks appeared. Even the immortal envoys in the middle world cannot figure out the reason. They can only let the people in the lower world come to see the cannon fodder. Lin Jing heard this and his heart sank. It was indeed different from what Yun said. How could this mission be safe? But now that things have come to this point, it is useless to regret it, so he can only follow the team forward with his head. The immortal envoy stood at the entrance of the valley and said indifferently, Your mission is very simple. Enter the Soul Valley and explore the source of the spiritual violence. If you find something abnormal, report it immediately. If anyone escapes without permission, he will be killed without mercy. As soon as this happened, many disciples' faces changed, but no one dared to say anything. Lin Jing lowered her head, thinking about solutions in her heart. He knew that if he had a low cultivation level, he would definitely not be able to be strong on the front. He could only rely on his brain to observe more and take less actions. The most important thing is to save his life. The team was quickly divided into several small groups, and Lin Jing was assigned to a 5-man team. The team was led by a junior brother named Li Changfeng. He was the strongest in the team in the middle of the foundation. The other teammates don't seem to be very reliable. 2 of them don't even have the foundation, so they are full of fear on their faces. Lin Jing smiled bitterly in his heart. If this team encounters any danger, it is probably the first one to fall apart. After entering the Soul Valley, the air became more stressed, and the surrounding mist was so heavy that it almost couldn't see his 5 fingers. Occasionally, there were a few strange roars coming from the mist, which made people's head numb. Li Changfeng walked in front, holding a long sword in his hand, and said in a low voice, It's all about the tight spots, don't put them in the order. There are very evil doors here, and I heard that there are not many monsters. Lin Jing pointed his head and followed closely in the middle of the team. He secretly held a low-level talisman in his hand, preparing for sudden situations at any time. Although his cultivation is not high, he has been in the lower realm over the years and has developed some skills to save his life. He is said to be on the stage at the critical moment. After about a moment of leaving, the team suddenly stopped. Li Changfeng raised his hand and signaled everyone not to move. He said in a low voice, There is a static in front of him, as if someone is fighting. You stay first, I'll go and see. After speaking, he walked towards the deep smoke and disappeared quickly. Lin Jing bowed, and felt unfavorable in her heart. The spirits here are in danger, and Changfeng went to explore the way alone. Whenever he encountered any trouble, the team would be over. He was about to remind him when he suddenly heard a cry coming from the fog, and then Li Changfeng shouted in shock, Run! It's the Blood Shadow bamboo. Before the words finished, a huge black shadow rushed out of the fog and rushed into the team. The monster was 3 feet tall, covered with blood-red tablets, green light in his eyes, and half a cut off in his mouth, which was obviously Li Changfeng's weapon. The team was always in a row, with some people screaming and running around, while others were directly on the ground, and they didn't dare to move. Lin Jing felt nervous and his brain moved quickly. He knew that escaping at this time was the stupidest choice. The Blood Shadow beast was extremely fast and would only be broken one by one if it was dispersed. He clenched his teeth and shouted, "Don't run away, get together, hold on with the talisman and magic weapon," he said. The first time he took out the talisman, threw it at the Blood Shadow ball, and pulled out the short knife from his waist and took out the defensive posture. Several other teammates saw him doing this and he even calmed down. He took out his magic weapon and formed a defense circle. The Blood Shadow beast was blown up by the talisman and roared with a roar. The speed of it came over was faster. It slapped a disciple with one claw and directly slapped the person flying, causing blood to fill the ground. Lin Jing gritted his teeth, and while the monster was attracted, he quietly roamed to the side, looking for a chance to stab the short knife hard at its back leg. "Ayo!" The Blood Shadow beast was in pain and turned towards Lin Jing. The smelly breath came over, which scared him, almost stood firm. He quickly flipped and dodged, and shouted, "Fast attack on its back leg, that's the weakness." Only then did the teammates react, concentrate their firepower to attack the lower plate of the Blood Shadow ball, and finally forced it back a few steps. But at this moment, a few more low growls came from the mist, and then the three similar Blood Shadow beasts came out and surrounded the team. Lin Jing felt a flash in his heart. It was over, there was no way out now. He was about to fight to the death, but suddenly he felt the ancient jade inside heat up, and then a vague sound echoed in his brain, "Turn the spirit into the body, break the realm." Although this sound continued, Lin Jingzhang heard it clearly. He was stunned for a moment, and immediately gritted his teeth, thinking that if he died, he would be a living doctor, he would be fine. He sat down with his legs, closed his eyes, and tried to inhale the surrounding heavy spirit into his body according to the guidance of the ancient jade. The spirit in the fog was originally irritable and abnormal. At this time, he was sucked in, and he was rushing into the veins like a flood, which made him almost scream. What's strange is that although this spirit was violent, it quickly gathered in his body, shaking the bottle of the heart. Lin Jing bit his teeth tightly and withstood the pain. Finally, he heard a click sound, as if something was broken. Then he became lighter and he practiced to directly break through from the training circle to the early stage of the foundation. He suddenly opened his eyes, only to feel that his whole body was full of strength, and his vision became clearer. The Blood Shadow beast's movement slowed down in his eyes. He lifted the short sword on the ground without hesitation and rushed towards the nearest monster. With a flash of the sword, it directly blocked its front paws. The monster screamed and retreated. After a few other things, he was a little afraid and didn't come up again. "What are you all fucking in a daze? Let's go together," Lin Jing shouted. Only then did the team members react and took action, and finally forced a few Blood Shadow beasts to retreat and disappeared into the smoke. After the battle ended, everyone sat on the ground, gasping for breath, and the eyes of Lin Jing were filled with surprise and admiration. You just broke through?" a teammate asked Baba. Lin Jing pointed at the point, but didn't explain much, just looked down at the ancient jade in the morning, and felt mixed emotions in his heart. This thing is indeed not simple, and it can help him break through the realm at the critical moment. It is simply a treasure. However, he also knew that the secret of this ancient jade was far more than this, and he might have a greater trouble waiting for him later. After a while of rest, the team reorganized. Although Li Changfeng lost, Lin Jingying became a new leader with her recent performance. He continued to penetrate the Soul Valley with the people, and his heart became more and more uneasy. The fog became more and more heavy, and the waves of the spirit violence became stronger and stronger. You could definitely hear the thunder wings far away, as if something was about to break out of the ground. After about half a minute of leaving, the team finally arrived in front of a huge crack. The crack was deep and could not be seen, and purple red light was emitting from the head. From time to time, lightning was revealed, and a breath of destruction was filled with the air. Lin Jing stood on the edge of the crack, his heart beating because the ancient jade in him was shaking violently at this time, as if he was attracted by something. Is this the source of the anomaly?" a teammate asked. Lin Jing didn't say anything, staring at the depth of the crack. At this moment, a low voice came from the crack, as if coming from the Nine Netherworld, carrying endless power. "The Sky Square chess game has opened. I can't wait for the chess pieces, quickly retreat." As soon as this sound came out, everyone's face changed drastically. Several disciples who had low cultivation knelt on the ground and did not dare to move. Lin Jing tied his teeth tightly. Although he was scared in his heart, the illusion of the chessboard that he saw on the trial scene appeared in his brain. He suddenly felt that the things in this crack might be the key to the entire strange phenomenon, and even related to the traits of the fairy world. "Let's go back, this place is not something we can touch," a teammate said tremblingly. Lin Jing hesitated for a moment and immediately shook his head. "No, the mission has not been completed, and going back is a dead end. Moreover, since there is something strange here, maybe there is something wrong with it. I have to figure out what is happening." After speaking, he took a deep breath, approached the cracker, held the ancient jade tightly in his hand, and was ready to face danger at any time. Other teammates saw him doing this, and although he was afraid, he was embarrassed to retreat and could only follow him with his head. At this moment, a purple light suddenly appeared from the crack, rushing Lin Jing. He reacted very quickly and hid on his side, but the purple light directly diamonded into the ancient jade inside him. Then the jade body shook and a blurred image appeared. In the image, a huge palace floats in the sky, surrounded by thunder and scattering with no power. In the middle of the palace, a figure in a black robe sat in a plate, holding a core of golden light in his hand, as if he was controlling the fate of the entire world. The figure turned slowly. Although he couldn't see his face clearly, his eyes seemed to be able to see through everything, staring straight at Lin Jing, which made his heart chill. "The Temple of Heaven, the core of the Way of Heaven, has been tampered with." An old voice came from the image, and then the image was broken, and the ancient jade returned to its tranquility. Lin Jing stood there, sweating all over her head, and her heart was overturned. Although he didn't understand what the core of the Way of Heaven was, the words tampered were blown in his brain like thunder. "Chi, brother you, what is that just now?" a teammate Xiaba asked. Lin Jing was shocked and felt shocked in his heart. He said in a low voice, "Don't worry about these first, we have to go back and report this matter to the Immortal Envoy. This place is too evil, and it is absolutely impossible for us to solve." After speaking, he quickly withdrew the cleft and walked out of the Soul Valley with his team. But he knew in his heart that this matter was not so simple. The palace and the man in the black robe, and the reaction of ancient jade in the image, were telling him that he had already entered a trait that was beyond his imagination. And behind this tragedy, it is probably that the supreme existence in the fairy world is controlling everything. He held the ancient jade tightly and his eyes were calm. No matter how dangerous the road ahead was, he had to figure out the truth, otherwise he would always be just a piece on someone else's chessboard. The sky outside the Soul Valley was still the strange purple-red color, and the thunder slashed down from time to time, illuminating the white faces of Lin Jing and the others. After evacuating from the crack, several teammates in the team did not pass by the shock just now. They were trembling when walking, and their eyes were filled with fear. Although Lin Jing was still calm on the surface, his heart seemed to be overwhelmed. His brain was full of the Temple of the Sky and the man in the black robe and the ancient jade image, and there was also the warning that the core of the Way of Heaven has been tampered with. He glanced down at the ancient jade inside, and the thing was still the same gray-clad shape, but he knew that this thing was definitely not simple, and it might be the key to the whole silence. "Brother Jing, do we really want to report this incident to the Immortal Envoy?" a teammate next to him asked in a small voice, with a clear hesitation in the voice. "How do I think we are not sure if we report this incident, we will be killed. The things in the crack sound like the big secret of the Immortal World. If we know these little rice in the lower world, we shouldn't know, so where can we have a way to survive?" Lin Jing stepped a step, turned to look at him, and smiled bitterly. "Don't report it. Then do you think we can hold it? This mission was originally arranged by the Immortal Envoy. They will find out the strangeness in the Soul Valley sooner or later. It would be better to take the initiative to explain than being imprisoned and waiting to die, and maybe it will be better to be better. Besides, he put it on, his eyes becoming a little deeper, I always think that this matter cannot be broken with me. If I don't figure it out, I won't be able to get it in my heart. The teammate was stunned by his words and wanted to rebel, but in the end he closed his mouth and followed behind him angrily. The team stumbled out of the Soul Valley, the fog dissipated, and the scene outside the valley re-emerged. The Immortal Envoy on the far mountain and other disciples of the sect were still waiting. When they saw them coming out, many people came in curious and looked disdainful, as if they thought that it was purely good for them to come out alive. Lin Jing ignored those eyes and walked straight to the Immortal Envoy with his teammates, bowed and said, "Sir, the source of the alien image in the Soul Valley has been found. It is a crack that emits purple light, with a breath of destruction inside, and it is suspected to be related to the Heavenly Palace. We are in a low cultivation level and dare not go deeper, so we are here to report it." As soon as this happened, the crowd around him was thrilled, and the cold Immortal Envoy narrowed his eyes slightly and asked in a low voice, "Tianmu Temple? How can you, a disciple of the lower realm, know such secret things? Tell me clearly, otherwise I would have doubted you will be worried." Lin Jing was nervous and knew that this was difficult to answer, but he was ready. He took out the piece of ancient jade from the ground and lifted it up and said, "My lord Huixian, I don't know what the Heavenly Palace is." But this ancient jade suddenly appeared next to the crack. This name was mentioned in it, and he also said that the core of the Way of Heaven has been tampered with. When we heard a fog, we could only report it as if it were. The Immortal Envoy's eyes fell on the ancient jade, and there was a strange light flashing in his eyes, as if he had recognized something. He was silent for a moment, then snatched his hand and said coldly, "You must not interfere in this matter. The ancient jade is left behind, so you should step down. I will come to the fairy world and I will not mention this matter again, otherwise I will be killed." Lin Jing lowered her head. Although she refused to let go of her heart, she also knew that this ancient jade could not be kept. He respectfully brought Yushur up and then retreated to the side with his team. The Immortal Envoy took the ancient jade and carefully looked at it. Then he put it in his sleeve and turned to order to other disciples of the sect, "The mission of the Soul Valley ends here. Everyone returns to the sect immediately and is not allowed to stay." After speaking, his figure flashed, turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the sky, as if he was in a hurry to deal with something big. Lin Jing looked at the direction where the Immortal Envoy left, and there was no expression on the surface, but his heart was overturned. He knew that the collection of ancient jade was definitely not the end, and the Immortal Envoy knew the secrets in the image, and might have even participated in it for a long time. He clenched his fists and swore secretly that no matter how difficult it was, he must investigate this matter to the end, otherwise it would always be just a chess piece in the hands of others. After returning to Qingyun's sect, life was calm for several months, but Lin Qing's heart was like a stone head. He had no ancient jade, and he always thought that he had lost something, and he was absent-minded when he cultivated his body. Yun saw his appearance, and he didn't have much trouble, but he had no choice but to stay with him. That day, the two of them sat in the small yard on the back mountain again. Yun Wang suddenly poked his arm and said in a low voice, "Brother Qing, I heard that someone has come to the middle world recently. He said that he wanted to choose disciples from the lower world to go to the fairy world. It sounded like it was related to the matter of the Soul Valley. Do you want to try it?" Lin Jing was stunned, turned to look at her, and his eyebrows began to snake. "Go to the fairy world? Is this not easy to hear? Why are people in the middle world suddenly interested in our lower world?" Yun Wang was standing shoulder to shoulder and said in a low voice, "I don't know either. I heard that something big happened in the fairy world is in urgent need of manpower, and even the disciples in the lower world have begun to call. Anyway, this is an opportunity. Maybe you can find the jade or find any trace. I know that you can't let go of the Soul Valley in your heart, right?" Lin Jing didn't say anything, but there was a flash of movement in his eyes. He knew that Yun said it was right, and this might be his only chance to get in touch with the secrets of the fairy world. Although it is dangerous, he will not be willing to do so if he doesn't try it. So, a few days later, when the central envoy came to Qingyun's sect to select disciples, Lin Jing reported without hesitation, and passed the assessment smoothly based on his previous performance in the Soul Valley and his early-stage cultivation. Before leaving, Yun pulled him and muttered for a long time, stuffed him a bunch of talismans and elixirs, and muttered, "Brother Jing, don't do anything to me. It's evil to hear that the place in the fairy world is evil. Remember to save your life first, don't come forward." Lin Jing smiled and pointed, patted her on the shoulder, and then followed the team to the delivery camp to the fairy world. The scene in the fairy world is far beyond Lin Jing's imagination. The sight of it is the endless floating island. Each island has a golden and blue palace built, and its spirit is almost turned into a fog, and it can be condensed into a spirit with just one grab. There were immortals flying over the sky, and there were immortals wearing rays of rays, with their storms, and they were full of vigor. Lin Jing stood in the team, although he was lowered on the surface, but he was secretly alert in his heart, because he could feel that although this place looked like a human fairyland, there was an indescribable pressure in the air, as if something big would happen at any time. These disciples from the lower realm were arranged on a small island next to the fairy world, responsible for some trouble. On the surface, they were to help the fairy world handle affairs, but in fact they were just cannon fodder. Lin Jing didn't mind these things. He knew in his heart that his purpose was not to come here, but to find out the secrets of the core of the heavenly way and the truth behind the ancient jade. Several months passed, and Lin Jingying used his own prudence and spirit to calm down on Zayashima, and even met several low-level immortal officials in the fairy world, and found a lot of news from their mouths. It turns out that the fairy world has not been peaceful recently. The spirit violence around the heavenly palace has become increasingly serious. There are even rumors that there is a problem with the core of the heavenly way, which has led to the gas flow in the three realms becoming unbalanced, and the exhaustion of the lower and middle realms is the best evidence. Although these news was fragmented, Lin Jing was shocked when he heard it because it was exactly the same as the image he saw in the Soul Valley. That night, Lin Qing took advantage of the night and sneaked out of her residence and walked towards a restriction on the edge of the island. He heard that behind this restriction there was a secret passage leading to the Temple of Heaven. Although it was dangerous, it might bring him closer to the truth. As soon as he approached the ban, he felt a powerful force coming and almost knocked him down. But he bit his teeth and forced himself to hold on to the pressure of the middle stage of the foundation. He took out a ban-breaking talisman stolen from the immortal official, and put it lightly, and a small hole was open when the ban was on the ban. Lin Jing was delighted and quickly drew in, walking forward along the secret passage. The secret passage was pitch black, and there was a rotten breath in the air, as if no one had passed away for many years. He left for about half a time, and finally saw a glimmer of light appearing in front of him, and at the same time he heard a deep voice of discussion. He felt nervous, and he lay on the ground, holding his breath, and quietly looked at it. He saw that the secret passage was a huge underground palace. There was a core of golden light floating in the center of the palace, which was the core of the heavenly way in the image. There were several people standing in the palace, one of whom was wearing a black robe and was arrogant, and it was the figure in the image. And beside him, there was a familiar person, the immortal envoy who had taken away the ancient jade. Lin Jing's heart was beating wildly, and she was shocked under the strong pressure, and she heard carefully what they were saying. "Emperor, the tampering of the core of the heavenly way is almost completed. Just absorb the last air of the lower realm and the artifact can be formed. At that time, the three realms will be in your palm," the immortal envoy said respectfully with his head down. The man in black robe, the Emperor Xuancang, sneered, and his voice was as low as if he was coming from the earth. "Okay, very good. However, the lower world seems to be a little restless recently. Can the holder of the ancient jade have a whereabouts? I don't want to make any mistakes in the end." The immortal envoy quickly replied, "Go back to the Emperor, the ancient jade has been handed over to the custody of the Blood Shadow Venerable. The holder is just a minor cultivation in the lower realm. He is in a low state and cannot make any waves. He is ordered to adjust him to the immortal realm and can be removed at any time. When Lin Jing heard this, she was shocked and finally understood everything and came to long to go. It turns out that all this is the traitor of Emperor Xuancang. He tampers with the core of the heavenly way and absorbs the air of the lower realm in order to create a magical weapon that can control the three realms. The ancient jade in his hand is probably to reveal this secret key, so they are targeted by them. He gritted his teeth and a burst of anger arose in his heart, but he also knew that his cultivation was too low now, and he was just in a desperate situation. At this moment, a cold snorted suddenly in the palace, and then a terrifying force directly penetrated Lin Jing's hiding place. He was shocked. He knew that he had been discovered, so he quickly turned around and ran away, but before he could take a few steps, he was trapped by a black shadow. The man was wearing a long blood-colored robe, with a cold air, and was obviously the Blood Shadow Venerable. When you are in the lower realm, you dare to explore the Emperor's plan? You are looking for death. The Blood Shadow Venerable sneered and raised his hand and slashed at Lin Jing. Lin Jing gritted his teeth, carried the power, took out all the talismans and magic weapons, and reluctantly slaughtered this blow, but the whole person was still shocked and smashed hard on the wall, spitting out a mouthful of blood. I'm a little clever, but unfortunately, you will die today. The Blood Shadow Master took action again. This time, Lin Jing was almost powerless and was about to be swallowed by blood. Suddenly, a crisp sound came out, "Stop." The Blood Shadow Venerable was stunned, stopped moving, turned around and saw a girl in blue robe rushing out of the secret passage, with a strange light flashing in her eyes, which was suddenly cloudy. Lin Jing was also stunned. Unexpectedly, she actually came to the fairy world and appeared at this critical moment. "Yun, why are you?" Before Lin Jing finished speaking, he saw Yun winking at him, and then said to the Blood Shadow Venerable, "Sir, I am the dark line specially arranged by the Emperor. I will hand it over to me for handling. You should go back to the palace first to avoid the Emperor's blame." The Blood Shadow Venerable glanced at her suspiciously. Although she didn't believe it, she didn't seem to want to be troublesome. She snorted coldly and turned away. Yun Lu relaxed his voice, and hurriedly helped Lin Jing up and said in a low voice, "Brother Jing, don't ask so many questions, leave first. I followed him secretly, and I just heard that you came here and then passed away." Although Lin Jing was full of doubts, he knew that it was not the time to speak, so he clicked and escaped with Yun Yuan in the secret passage. The two of them ran all the way, finally escaped from the ban and hid in a secret cave along the edge of the Kojima. Lin Jing leaned against the cave wall, gasping for breath, turned to look at Yun, and couldn't help asking, "Why did you come to the fairy world? Do you still know how troublesome it is? What did that mean just now?" Yun smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, "Brother Jing, I have some things to blame for you. In fact, my life experience is a bit related to the fairy world. My spiritual power is not born, but a forbidden fragment from the Tianmu Holy Hall. I came to the fairy world just to figure out my experience, but I didn't expect to have it in this place. I was just talking nonsense." Fortunately, the Blood Shadow Venerable didn't think much, otherwise we would all be over. Lin Jing heard it, was silent for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "No matter what you are from, we have grown up together since childhood, I believe you. However, this matter cannot be forgotten. If Emperor Xuancang's slander is really done, the three realms will be over. We have to find a way to stop him." Yun was staring, his eyes fixed. "Yes, I know that the Heavenly Palace has a weakness. My spiritual eyes can see through the restriction there. I may help you penetrate the tampering process of destroying the core of the Heavenly Way. However, this matter is too dangerous, and we have to prepare for it." In the next few days, the two began to secretly plan, contacted some lower-level immortals who were not as tall as the fairy world, and formed a team, ready to take a single plunge into the temple of the Heavenly Palace. Lin Jing knew that this might be his last chance. If he failed, he would not only die, but the three realms would also be the chessboard of Emperor Xuancang. The days of action finally arrived, the night was dark, and the thunder surrounding the Temple of Heaven was even more violent than before, as if it was a sign of something ominous. Lin Jing, carrying Yun and the team members, used the power of her spiritual eyes to avoid the layered restrictions, and finally entered the interior of the Temple of Holy Hall. The golden light in the hall is magnificent, the core of the Way of Heaven is floating in the center, and countless runes are circling around it, scattering a breath of destruction. "It's now!" Yuning sniffed softly, his eyes shining, and he forced a gap in his ban. Lin Jing tied his teeth tightly and penetrated the gap. He held a stolen core talisman from the immortal official, ready to directly destroy the core of the heavenly way. But at this moment, a terrifying threat descended, and Emperor Xuancang appeared in the middle of the hall, looking at them with a sneer. "When you click, you dare to defeat this emperor? Today, don't even want to leave either." The emperor waved his hand and countless black lights came towards them. Lin Qing's heart sank, knowing that this time it was really a life-threatening death. But he did not retreat and turned to Yun. "You go first, I'll hold him back. No matter what, we can't let him succeed." Yun bit his lips, and the light flashed, but in the end he still pointed the head and retreated with the other members. Lin Jing faced the emperor himself. Although his cultivation was as good as the sky, an unyielding flame ignited in his heart. He knew that he was just a minor cultivator in the lower realm, but if he didn't stand up, the 3 realms would be over. "Come on, I'll fight you today." Lin Jing roared, igniting the power of his body, impeding the core of the heavenly way, and preparing to use the last blow to completely destroy the root of this tragedy. The emperor sneered and raised his hand, but at this moment, the core of the heavenly Tao suddenly burst out with a dazzling light, as if it was touched by Lin Jing's determination, and began to shake violently. Lin Jing could only feel a vast force rushing into his body, as if the will of the entire 3 realms was supporting him. He gritted his teeth and carried the emperor's attack, and finally put the nuclear-breaking talisman on the core of the heavenly Tao. With a huge sound, golden light shone everywhere, the entire temple began to collapse, and the emperor's roar rushed into the sky, but his figure was swallowed by the light and disappeared. Lin Jing fell to the ground, his body covered in blood, and his mind became blurred. But there was a smile on the corner of his mouth because he knew that this chess game was finally broken by him. There may be hope in the fate of the 3 realms. He closed his eyes, and his ears saw Yun shouting, and then everything fell into darkness. Far away, Yun took the team members out of the Hall of Holy Hall, turned his head and looked at the collapsed building, and his eyes could not stop flowing down. She knew that Lin Jing might really not be able to come back this time, but his life changed to the first line of the 3 realms. She clenched her fists and swore secretly that no matter how difficult it is in the future, she would continue to go on and complete Lin Jing's unscrupulous career. The slaying of the Temple of Heaven turned into fallen thunder, the spirit of the fairy world began to slowly recover, and the exhaustion of the lower and middle realms was also gradually resolved. Although the root of the sacred is destroyed, the remaining force is still secretly ready to move, and new storms seem to be curling. And under that ruin, a faint breath quietly resurrected, as if it predicted that a story had not really ended.